Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today my voice is still trash. It's going to be a miracle if I can somehow make it to the One Man Low Council stream later tonight on the channel, but I did want to put out a video today because I found this news pretty interesting. Before going any further though, make sure they smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel because we are almost at 23,000 subscribers, which is just insane to me, the amount of growth that I've seen over the last 2 weeks especially. So to all my new subscribers, thank you very, very much for your love and for your support. And yeah, please let me know in the comment section the kind of videos that you would like to continue to see on the channel. If you really prefer the box office breakdowns, if you really like the movie reviews, because those are kind of the two areas that I'm mostly focusing on now as such. And this has a lot to do, the story I'm covering today, with box office numbers, because as you all know, I have covered the Suicide Squad, and I have covered the fact that the movie really isn't doing all that well in the box office, and a lot of people have tried to argue, well, you know what, it may not be doing very well in the box office, but a lot of people are watching it on HBO Max, and so therefore there has to be some money there. Just remember that the issue with that is that it's very hard for us to track how many new subscribers they are getting or how many subscribers they are keeping because of just the Suicide Squad. And so because of that, it's really hard to be able to argue that the movie itself is profitable. We can argue that Warner Brothers or HBO Max as a company is profitable because of the amount of money they're making from their service, but as far as the individual film is concerned, it is really hard to say and to argue that this movie is going to recoup its investment if the numbers don't really back that up. So even though Warner Brothers might be able to make up for the massive loss that this movie is happening, that does not mean that the movie itself is making the money back on its own merits. And one of the biggest signs also that this is really not the case is what we see going on right now as what's been released from Samba TV. So Samba TV is one of those companies that usually you kind of opt into it, right? Whether or not you want your services and your TV to be tracked to go into this type of calculation. And all that they do is they go ahead and they compare the numbers of how many TVs they have in people's homes, how many people are watching and accessing given movies at any given time. And here, I think, is another key indication that the Suicide Squad is really not doing all that well. Not only do we have the box office numbers to showcase that, and again, look at my last couple of videos talking about the Suicide Squad box office if you really want to see a good indication of that, but this is also, I think, a really bad sign for the Suicide Squad, especially as far as the longevity of the film is concerned, because according to Samba TV, Suicide Squad is 26% behind Mortal Kombat. Now, I know you all know my thoughts on the new Mortal Kombat movie. I just don't think it's very good. There's a lot of issues with it. It really isn't Mortal Kombat either. I mean, if they were going to say that this was, and named it something different as far as, the naming scheme to be very clearly like a prequel to Mortal Kombat, maybe they could have gotten away with some of that stuff. But when you portray something as Mortal Kombat and then you don't actually have Mortal Kombat happen in the movie, that already is kind of off the mark. And I know that this one was a lot more divisive than even Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad, I think, has divisions on different levels depending on the fandom and, where you are in the fandom specifically. Mortal Kombat, I think, was just more of this mixed bag where critics hated it, but then even audiences were kind of a little bit mixed on this as well. And remember that when I say this, I say this based off of the interactions that I see in my comments, what I see online, and I don't really compare that to what I see on Rotten Tomatoes or anything like that, because those companies are just worthless and are shills. I mean, it really has been proven at this point when they are deleting reviews and changing their systems to try and make it so that some films get treated better and get higher scores. At that point, you really can't trust those systems anymore. But this is, again, not very good for Suicide Squad, being 26% behind the viewership of Mortal Kombat. So let's go a little further into this. It says here, third-party streaming analytics company Samba TV has weighed in on the weekend viewership of the Suicide Squad HBO Max, saying that 2.8 million households tuned in over the film's Friday to Sunday frame. That number among movies on HBO Max marks the highest weekend ever for a DC property, well ahead of Justice League: The Snyder Cut. And that, I think, is another huge indication. The fact that the Snyder Cut, which was so hyped, which was so big among Snyder fan households, the fact that the Suicide Squad is doing better than the Snyder Cut, hopefully is going to be able to wake up some people to the fact that this DCEU, and especially the Snyderverse, is not all that popular. Again, 1.8 million households, that seems like a lot as far as, being well over a million people. But the fact that a film like The Suicide Squad is doing better than the Justice League Snyder Cut, which was so hyped among fans, which was promoted nonstop among fans, I think that needs to be an indication that these properties are not nearly as popular outside of these fandoms, outside of these small groups. And I think it's very important for us, even me as a fan of some of the other properties that have similar fandoms, I think that it's important for us to always recognize that we're not as large as we think that we are. And I think that this kind of a number really does show that, and it is very indicative of that very fact. It says here, again, also that and the Christmas weekend of Wonder Woman 1984 at 2.2 million. So as you can see, even Wonder Woman 1984 did better than the Snyder Cut, and Suicide Squad did better than both of them. It goes on to say, but it's not the highest the streaming service has seen for a day-to-day theatrical movie as monitored by Samba. That crown still belongs to the R-rated new line title Mortal Kombat, which drew 3.8 million. Keep that in mind. Mortal Kombat brought 3.8 million viewers. That is so much more than not just the Suicide Squad, but also Snyder Cut, Wonder Woman 84, which to me is insane, because out of all the movies, I would say that Mortal Kombat was probably the weakest of all those movies. Not that any of them were really any good, but it's just kind of amazing to me that a film like that was able to be kind of the record holder here. Now, obviously, one can indeed look to the fact that as far as the day in which it came out, and again, that makes some sense, but the fact that even Christmas weekend of Wonder Woman 84 was not able to have that higher number is just kind of insane to me. It goes on to say that Suicide Squad's HBO Max weekend visits views in Samba TV homes are 26% behind Mortal Kombat. So again, not a very good start for this movie. It goes on. The Suicide Squad did not fare well in its opening at the domestic weekend box office, earning $26.5 million. That is below the hoped for $30 million plus start for several reasons, i.e. its availability free to 47 million HBO Max subscribers, fans' dissatisfaction with the overall DC franchise, and possibly the spiking Delta variant, though there are many box office sources who firmly believe the latter wasn't chiefly to blame, which is very interesting. It's one of the first times that you really see these mainstream news sources not really take full blame of the COVID scandemic. Like, it's kind of amazing to me that they are kind of brushing that aside, but the numbers really do play out, because if it was the pandemic that was causing the numbers to fall, you would have seen that in all of these different markets, but you really aren't seeing it in any crazy degree. And so I'm glad that they are pointing out, saying that many people are saying that this Delta variant is not really as much of an impact as some people might be trying to spin it. And in reality, what it is it's the fact that the DCEU has really shrunk, and you can really find that out by looking at the box office of the DCEU films. The only film that was really able to branch out beyond its own fandom was a film like Shazam. I know people don't like me bringing up that movie or don't like that film as much, but the fact is that that film had the most universal appeal among all of them. I mean, all the other ones, even though they may have done better financially, they are ones where after the fact, when you look at the reviews and when you look at the way in which it was perceived and all that stuff, you really just do find that they were not nearly as appealing outside of the hardcore DCEU fans or the hardcore Snyderverse fans. And I think that that is something that fans of those franchises are going to have to start to take into account as they move forward. And obviously, I think it's going to be a reality check for a lot of people, hopefully a reality check for a lot of people as well. But I just wanted to put this story out there because I do think that this is pretty bad news for them. Also, they did finally update the weekend box office numbers, and actually it ended up coming in less than what they had expected. So the movie came in, instead of it being at $72.2 million, it ended up being around $71 million. So not a huge change there, but there is always that that change, or that update that puts it more in line with where it actually is. And I think that that is also very indicative of what's going on right now, not just in the box office world, but also within these giant budget films too. It also came out that Suicide Squad spent $100 million at least on marketing. So it's actually higher than what typically films will spend. For a movie that's $185 million, normally you do 50% of the production budget, and that's normally what is kind of the rule to spend on marketing. So they've already overspent that, which means that this movie is going to be even more in the red than it already had been. Again, I talked about this on my box office breakdown, but especially now that we know that this 72.2 is not as high because it's been adjusted. I mean, again, this film right now is negative $234 million. The actual marketing budget, again, everything added together, since we know it's $100 million that they've said that they spent on it, that means that the movie costs at least $285 million. So as you can see, that's even higher than the projected one that I had here based on industry standards. So It is just not looking very good. Again, that the fact that the Suicide Squad is even trending behind a film like Mortal Kombat, again, which was also another Warner Brothers flop that came out theatrically, and also to see where it positions and lies in with all the other films that have been released from Warner Brothers. It's just not a very good year for big studios. I mean, Disney is failing almost every single film it puts out. It's losing hundreds of millions of dollars almost every single time. You look at Warner Brothers, is in a very similar position. This is just the state of the world that we are in. And I really hope and pray that studios start to wake up and say, okay, let's stop putting out these giant budget, soulless films and actually start to go back to basics, put out smaller budget films with actually good, well-written stories, well-crafted stories, and actually use practical effects and actually use things that are going to be able to stand the test of time, rather than films like The Suicide Squad, which, yeah, you might have a small contingent of fans who are very passionate about and really love, but in the general scheme of things, it'll be a forgotten movie that no one really cares about in the end. And again, that's just my own perception on that. But anyway, what are your thoughts about this? Are you surprised that the Suicide Squad is not faring as well as some people might seem to try to indicate that it is? Again, it's not surprising to me because the film just isn't very good. But obviously, there are a lot of fans who are big fans of it. Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button. If you're watching on Odyssey, you're all amazing, beautiful people. Hopefully, my voice is able to recover by the end of the week. You're great. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless.
And now for a huge shout out to all of my August Locals, Patreon, and Subscribe Star members. Starting off with my Locals crew: Cat's App, The Real It, D Sharp, Biffer the Hobbit, Robert Barnes, and Goblin Squatch. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on Locals. And now on to my Patreon members: Andrew Hoyle, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dion, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Lance, Laura, the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Allen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Benden, Tina Bojan, and Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. And lastly, to my Subscribe Star peeps: Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Subscribe Star, and to everyone for supporting me on these platforms. Also, a shout out to all of my YouTube members. You get shouted out at the end of every single live stream. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video, please check out my Locals Patreon Subscribe Star. And you can go ahead and find those links in the top link of this description. You can find, it's called the Willow link, and it'll have a list to literally all of the social media platforms and all the different ways that you can support the channel. If you join at the $1 level, you can actually get your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream. $5 level gives you that, plus you get access to exclusive giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I've got tons of 4K steelbooks to give away this month, including for Top Gun. I also have A Quiet Place Part 2. I have Snatch on 4K, the John Wick trilogy on 4K, and also I have a Sicario 4K disc as well, and a bunch of others that are going to be coming in this month too. So if you want to have access to any of those types of exclusive giveaways, join at the Army of Asgard level. At the $10 level, the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, including instant reactions when I go to see movies. I do quick little filmings of myself and talk about the films that I have seen and my instant reactions to that. You also get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger once or twice a month, and you get to also ask us any question that you want. We put a Q&A post up, and you get to ask us whatever it is that you want to ask. So again, if that sounds cool to you, Keeper of the Bifrost level. And lastly, there is the Chosen of Valhalla level, where you get all of that stuff, plus in your first month as a Chosen of Valhalla member, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, ship it anywhere in the world, and also you get to once a month be featured on the OMB Reviews channel, and you get to talk with me. We usually chill out for 3 to 4 hours, and I ask everyone what they've been watching, what they want to talk about, what they want to promote, and it's always a really good time. And so if that sounds interesting to you, please consider joining. That is going to be on Subscribe Star and on Patreon only, as Locals is just the Keeper of the Bifrost level. But anyway, thank you all very much for your time, for your support, and for listening to this shout out video. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.